As the story was told to me by my friend Kim, several years ago, she and her husband Kevin had taken their daughter Madison trick-or-treating on an unusually cold Halloween night. The air was crisp, and there was frost settling on the last of the green grass in the well-groomed yards. The children were all wearing coats over their costumes, so every person passing out candy could be heard asking the children what they were this year. The children would dutifully unzip their coats as they stood in line to take a piece of candy from the bowl and proclaim what their costume was. "I'm Elsa," yelled Madison, showing off her dress. Her blonde hair with a braid was making her head itch as she scratched it and wiggled it around. Kevin tugged on Kim's coat and whispered to her, asking if she'd noticed the weird kid in the Grim Reaper costume. Kim looked past Kevin and saw what appeared to be a tall teenage kid. She was assuming that, based solely on his height, because she couldn't see his face as he was wearing a robe with a large hood, and inside the hood looked like nothing, just emptiness. There must be a black fabric covering it, she thought. His hands looked like skeleton hands. Gloves, she figured, and he was holding a scythe that looked a little too real for her taste. "Yeah?" she whispered back. "What's up?" "I don't know," he answered. "It just gives me the creeps." He's alone as far as I can tell, and after he walked around for a bit, he just started leaning up against that oak tree right there. "Huh," replied Kim. "Let's keep an eye on him, I guess." And just then a whole crowd of teens ran up to the house next to where the Reaper kid was leaning up against the tree. "Oh, see there?" whispered Kim. "There's his buddies." Kevin nodded, and they went on. Apparently it took them about another 30 minutes or so before they came back down the other side of the street. By now it was about 7:30, and Kim was getting very close to calling it a night. They had told Madison that she could go for another 5 minutes, and she was upset. The kid had all the energy in the world, and why wouldn't she? Free candy? That's worth walking for. Apparently, the Reaper kid was still leaning up against the tree. This time, it was Kim who noticed him and poked Kevin. "That kid is still there," she said. "Maybe he's just out with a kid's sibling, and he's waiting for them," said Kevin, with a type of question sound at the end. "Yeah, that makes sense, I suppose," replied Kim, and just before they got to the house of Mrs. Patterson, the old lady who'd been living in that house since Kim was young enough to trick-or-treat, the Reaper kid began walking towards the front door. Mrs. Patterson had been a teacher for so long that she'd had Kim's mother in her class, but here she was, passing out candy. And just as Madison was getting to the stairs, Mrs. Patterson came down them after recognizing Kim. Her arms were outstretched, as if she were going to embrace her. "Hello, Kim. Is this little Maddie?" she was asking, and she tripped and began falling to the hard sidewalk. She hit her head hard, and blood immediately began pooling at her temple. Kevin got on his phone to call an ambulance, and as Kim began to kneel down, the Reaper kid knelt down first and touched Mrs. Patterson on her back. Just then, Mrs. Patterson took one deep breath and let out a wheezing exhale that seemed to last for 20 or 30 seconds. The Reaper kid turned his head towards Kim, and a tingle went down her spine as she looked into his hood, and she saw nothing. Nothing but the greenest eyes she'd ever seen. And she swears to this day that suddenly there was a freezing cold blast of air and a mist where the Reaper kid had been kneeling, and he was gone. She could hear Kevin as if he was off far in the distance. "Yes, I'll check her pulse," as he put his finger on her wrist. No, I don't feel one,"